had
Yeah.
that kind of alt grunge hair
Yes.
with the goatee.
Not the full Valderrama, but a little Sideshow Bobish.
Looked like he could have played fiddle for Counting Crows or something like that. I'm Arizona Family political editor Dennis Welch.
Dennis, fake news Welch. Try to tell the truth.
And this is the Politics Unplugged podcast.
Dennis, if you have a problem with substance abuse, I am more than willing to talk to you anytime you need.
All right, and welcome back to another edition of the Politics Unplugged podcast edition. And, you know, this week we have Joanna De La Cruz from the It Goes Too Far campaign. In response to our last week's podcast, we had Chris Love on, who is trying to push and get a ballot initiative, a citizens ballot initiative passed to enshrine abortion rights and access to abortion in the state constitution. Joanna is here to tell us why, give us the opposite view of this, and you're here to explain why you think this is a bad idea. So, Joanna, just tell us why. Why are you fighting against this campaign?
Well, thanks for having me on, Dennis. Yeah. It's a real pleasure to be here.
Mm-hmm.
We, as a campaign, are made up of individuals with all differing viewpoints on the issue of abortion, but we agree on this one thing, that this amendment that's been proposed just goes too far. A recent survey found that 90% of Arizonans would limit abortion at 15 weeks or earlier. This amendment goes far beyond that. We'll talk more about that, I think, as we get into this. But in so many ways, this amendment goes too far. And as I've been saying, really the best thing that could happen for the abortion amendment campaign at this point is for people not to actually read the language of the amendment.
Well, let's start there, because the current law right now on the books, that's the law of the land, is that 15-week law.
Yes.
And no exceptions for rape or incest in that law.
But the law does allow exceptions for medical emergencies beyond that, which actually Attorney General Mays just confirmed that includes a major impairment of a bodily function. A woman does not have to be at death's door. It's really what we've understood as the medical exemption that's been in place in Arizona abortion law in some fashion since 1999.
And you are in favor of the current statute of keeping that, or would you like to see further restrictions?
So our campaign is focused on educating voters about this particular amendment. Because we have people with all different opinions. We don't take positions on other laws, but we think Arizonans have a right to know that, hey, the law has been clarified, it has been settled, and this is where it stands right now. It is legal up to 15 weeks with exceptions beyond that for medical emergencies. And since that's where arguably 90% of Arizona voters are at, we think that's a critical piece of information.
Well, let's get into the specifics of that ballot initiative, right? It would protect access to enshrine access to an abortion up to viability. Now, typically under Roe v. Wade, that was interpreted to be at 22 to 24 weeks. My understanding is your campaign and people who are against this ballot initiative, they have a big problem with the other exception in this. It would say, life of the mother, physical or the mental health of the mother beyond viability. And this is where you have the big issue here, correct?
Yeah, well, let's take even a step back before that, though, and talk about the definition of viability. So the amendment actually uses a definition of viability that's different than what's been in Arizona law. And if you read the language, it even includes up to the particulars of the case as part of the definition of viability. So they don't give a week limit. But beyond that, yes, there is what's included a mental health exception, which we know from decades upon decades of case law, starting with the U.S. Supreme Court decision in Doe v. Bolton, to cover really anything that the treating provider wants it to cover. And that could be anything from the presence of stress, economic situation, family size, all sorts of factors that most Arizonans probably wouldn't traditionally think of as falling under an official definition of mental health.
But, Chris Love would say to that, these are decisions, are medical decisions that should be made between a woman and their doctor. And you can't account for all situations in any pregnancy out there. So why wouldn't you want to guard against that? That if something pops up in your pregnancy, you are protected in case you do need that abortion.
Well, this is the purpose of things like Arizona's medical exception that exists to protect women who are in serious health danger to their physical health, of death, of risk of a major bodily function being impaired. Arizona voters have the right to know that this amendment, they can decide what they think about that, but that this amendment would, in practice, allow abortion all the way up until birth. And to push back on, they'll often claim that's not happening. 10 to 15,000 late-term abortions happen in the U.S. every single year. So this is not a thing that's not happening.
Late-term is different, though, than, like 9 months, right? I mean, or
but
right up, or you're saying right up to birth. Let's say 9 months.
There is nothing in the amendment that would prevent that from happening. And so the proponents can tell us what maybe their intentions were, but this is going to be interpreted by the courts based on the language of the amendment. This is a constitutional amendment.
But for those 15,000, you're talking across the country, correct? 15,000 late-term abortions. That's across the country, not just not Arizona. I want to be clear on that. But I would imagine if you look through those, there are probably most of those would be some sort of medical condition popped up there for that to happen. Because I don't hear cases where doctors are saying that this is a good idea to have a abortion that late in a pregnancy unless there's a serious medical condition.
Well, I think what the proponents of this amendment need to be asked is, why did they write it in this way? And I think it's because they know where Arizona voters are at. They gave us a sort of limit in name only that in practice is really not going to be a limit at all. And again, that's just not where Arizona voters are at. Statistic after statistic shows Arizona voters and voters across the country are very uncomfortable with late-term abortion. They don't support it.
And they
want reasonable limits.
And they have been asked about that. And the reason why, and I've asked them about that, I've asked Chris Love about that last week, why was it written this way? And they want to make sure that everything is covered, every contingency could be covered in an abortion. I mean, that's their answer to that you can't legislate for everything.
Well, then they need to stop telling voters that there is a limit at viability, and they need to tell voters what that actually means. Because when they look at the language, when voters actually see that and they see what that language would do, that's different than what they're being told by proponents, unfortunately.
Okay, let's talk a little bit about the politics of the whole thing. I mean, you're running a campaign, you're running an anti-campaign. You've seen the polling across the country. You've seen the polling here in Arizona. It seems like the polling I've seen, you feel free to disagree with me. I know you will if you do. But it seems like the public and voters are supportive of having access to abortion in Arizona.
I think what we've seen is that voters have a variety of opinions on this issue. It's an issue that people have a lot of opinions on. But where we see the majority of voters coming together is that they want some kind of common sense limitations. And again, polling is showing us that 15 weeks or earlier is kind of where that falls. In fact, that poll that just came out in the middle of May here in Arizona found that nearly half of those 90% that wanted it limited at 15 weeks or earlier would put that at like 6 weeks. And so this is an amendment that's extremely out of step with Arizona voters. What we need to do, Arizona voters they're different than in any other state. We think independently. We handle things kind of differently than people in other states do. We like to be given the facts. We like to have you sort of level with us and then let us make up our own mind. And that's exactly what we feel like is not happening. As we're talking to voters across the state, we're finding that they're not being told what's in the amendment. They haven't been invited to read it yet, which is something we're inviting them to do. And they don't really know the consequences of what it would do. And as they're finding that out, they are not supporting this. This is just, it's out of step with Arizona so far.
And I have to just be clear and admit I'm not familiar with the poll you just cited. So I'm not. If we can share that,
I absolutely share that with you.
And we
it's
can,
a Noble Predictive Insights poll.
Okay, and we can tweet that poll out later on Twitter or something like that in case people are interested in that.
Yeah.
But 6 weeks, you said some people want even further restrictions than 15 weeks. But we saw a majority, nearly every Republican in the legislature vote to support a total abortion ban or near total abortion ban. The pre-Roe law, which I know is how you like to describe it, but is broadly known as the 1864 near total abortion ban. Zero access is different than some access to it. And did that hurt your case there? Because the people who are supporting this ballot initiatives are saying we need protections in case we get a legislature that wants to ban abortions outright altogether.
So the legislative process has worked itself out. We now are in a situation where we have clarity on the law. It's at 15 weeks with exceptions for medical emergencies beyond that. What voters are being asked to consider now is this amendment that may be before them in November. And they're being asked to vote on the merits of this amendment that will be constitutional and that, as you know, will be very, very difficult to change if we begin to experience consequences. Let's look at a state like Michigan. They passed something similar in 2022. Less than 2 years later, they've already lost tons of safety precautions. like the requirement for informed consent, like the requirement for a doctor to rule out an ectopic pregnancy, which, as we know, if not detected, that could be deadly, including the requirement for Michigan clinics to even report complications of abortions if a woman were to die. So this is not just in theory. We're seeing the consequences of these amendments in other states, and Arizona voters have the chance to truly be informed and do something different.
Does the campaign, do you trust doctors? Do you distrust? Because it seems, do you trust women to make their own decisions? I mean, it seems like there is some skepticism on your side.
Well, I'm glad that you bring up doctors, because for all the talk about this being between a doctor and a patient, this amendment actually removes the doctor from that doctor-patient relationship. You will not find the doctor or the word physician anywhere in this amendment. The proponents, the writers of this amendment chose the word healthcare professional, and they chose not to further define that word. What that word means under Arizona law is a whole list of providers that I think most Arizonans would agree are not qualified to oversee and protect the health of a woman in that situation. And they can, I've heard them laugh that off and say, oh, that wouldn't happen. That's ridiculous. Well, they're the ones who chose that word, and they chose not to define it. And so they have left the door open for that. And we're not just talking about a surgical procedure. We're talking about prescribing a pill. We're talking about the complications that could come if a woman is not checked for an ectopic pregnancy, if she's not, 1 in 25 women who take the abortion pill end up in the ER. And so a doctor is critical to protect a woman from those kinds of complications that can arise.
Yeah, and I'm not familiar with that stat either. I just feel compelled to say that for people listening. I haven't double-checked that fact about the people ending up in the ER room for taking the pill. But, I'm just trying to get into the mindset here, what's worst-case scenarios for you? Because, my belief is, I think most women, most healthcare providers want to do what's best, and I don't think there's a lot of people out there, folks out there that are doing late-term abortions, just because they can. I think most people are out there doing these kinds of things because it's in the medical health interest of the mother and the patient.
But we're talking a lot about intentions and what could or would or should happen. What I'm talking about is, what does the language in the amendment say? What is the words that have been chosen in the amendment, and what will be the consequences of those words as this is litigated, as cases come up in court? And that's what we have to look at. The bottom line is, regardless of what they may say now they intended, the proponents drafted this amendment in such a way where that's left incredibly vague.
And so let's talk a little bit more specifically about the campaign that you're running, because it does come down to getting votes. Who's funding this campaign? What's the strategy?
The strategy is to inform voters, and it's to make sure that they have the opportunity, that they're invited to actually read the language of this amendment and to correct misinformation that's out there. I'm going to give you another one that's a huge piece of misinformation that keeps being pushed to confuse voters. This amendment is not going to have any impact on miscarriage care or ectopic pregnancy care. That's a huge fallacy. Miscarriage care and ectopic pregnancy care are available today. They'll be available tomorrow, regardless of what happens with this amendment. And in fact, A.G. Mays just affirmed in her opinion released a few days ago that ectopic pregnancy care and miscarriage care are not abortion. And so this is what I believe is a scare tactic to confuse voters who maybe are not fully on board with this amendment, but they're obviously concerned about access to miscarriage care and ectopic pregnancy care. And it's important that voters know that's not going anywhere. That's already protected, and that's been thoroughly affirmed.
But as far as the campaign infrastructure itself, who's funding this? How much money are you going to have to fund a campaign like this? Because this is an incredible education situation that you're looking at. Because I believe the ballot initiative that's moving forward, I think sometime next week, they're going to be dropping about 750 to 800,000 signatures. That's a lot of people to sign on support before a single vote had been cast in this election. And remember, it's far more than double what they needed. I believe they needed about 383,000 signatures and some change to get on the ballot. So they're more than doubling that requirement. It seems like a lot of support is out there in the public for this. What's the funding look like for you guys?
Well, let's remember, first of all, that a lot of those voters haven't had the chance to be fully informed yet on what the amendment says and does. So with that in mind, we are raising support from across the state. You can check our reports. We're going to be filing another one very shortly for the next quarter. So we are getting support. We're going to have the support that we need to run a strong campaign. Our campaign is going to be both grassroots and traditional. So we've got over 3,300 volunteers across the state activated right now in almost every county. And they are on the ground. They're in farmers markets. They're at libraries. They're everywhere educating voters. That's going to continue and just continue to ramp up. And then we're going to be doubling down on our efforts to get that voter education information out to people in every county, to make sure that every voter possible has the chance to actually read that amendment and know what it would do before November if this in fact gets on the ballot.
All right, and let's wrap up with this then. We're about out of time. Just what's been the response out when you're out there educating the public, like out there from these voters? What are they saying? Are you changing people's minds? Are you saying people like didn't understand this, or what are you hearing?
Oh, yeah. No, people are like, oh, my gosh, I didn't know. I didn't know that as a parent I would be cut out of what's going on with my minor daughter and that she could get an abortion and be alone and suffer complications without me ever knowing. You know, I didn't know that safety standards that I'm used to being in place would go away, and that, you know, that could include standards that protect a woman from hemorrhaging and sepsis and, you know, even death, perforations, all these kinds of crazy things, that these laws are in place for a reason. And so, yeah, I didn't know that it allows abortion beyond viability. People are not happy with what they're hearing, and many of them that we've talked to, if they've already signed, have regretted that and will vote differently if this is on the ballot in November.
All right, Joanna, thank you very much for stopping by here and having a conversation about this. I look forward to the rest of the campaign playing out, and best of luck to you.
Thank you, Dennis. Right. Good to be here.
Welcome back to the second half of Politics Unplugged. I'm joined by Colin, as always.
Yeah.
Hell of a week, man. Hell of a week. Got nothing to really talk about. Probably should just end this podcast right about now.
Nothing happened.
Those of you looking for our third week in a row of Caitlin Clark takes will be severely disappointed.
Yeah, I got nothing on that this week.
We got nothing on that. Go check out the game. I think they're here this weekend before the pod drops. They should have played, and Madness should have ensued. I hope you enjoyed the game and go watch it, whatnot. But actually, we got to talk about some goddamn politics, man.
Yeah. So how about that debate, huh? I mean, there are good debates and there are bad debates.
Yes.
And now
then there's this debate.
And now I experienced the "I'm ashamed to be an American" debate.
Oh, good Lord.
I'm humiliated by this debate.
That was a really bad debate.
It really was. It was just infuriating and depressing. And I think I speak for a lot of people out there when I look at this and I think, how on earth are we down to these two?
How did we get here? I mean, it is a real question. But let's start. Let's unpack this. Let's start with the top lines of the debate. I think it was shocking to see, the president of the United States, the current president of the United States, Joe Biden. It was really shocking to see him, mumbling, not finishing thoughts.
Yeah,
that's the headline coming out of that debate. It was going to, as soon as you saw that, you knew it was going to be the headline. It was going to be the talking point of that. And I'd mentioned a few times during our live coverage of that it was the danger of reinforcing that negative narrative that's going on, and that's exactly what happened there.
And I think even Republicans were surprised by that
because
as much as they have pushed he doesn't know where he is, he's doddering, he's lost it. As much as they were pushing that in the days up to the debate, that had turned into he's going to be really sharp, and it's because he's on drugs.
Yeah, it was absurd.
It was a really weird thing, but they were like foaming the runways for Biden being really good in the debate and destroying that narrative.
Yeah, because
that did not happen.
Yeah, they were trying to turn him into the Jose Canseco, Barry Bonds of politics.
Yes.
And that did not happen.
It did not happen. He looked awful.
Looked awful. Sounded awful. And look, people listening to this podcast are like, "Oh, Dennis, Colin, what about the substance of the debates?" I get it. I get debates are supposed to be about substance, but style points count for a lot in modern politics, and you cannot deny that. And he didn't meet that standard. It was a low bar. It was a low bar to get over, and Joe Biden did not get over that.
Yes, the bar was on the floor, and he tripped on it.
Yeah, and I've heard from some folks defending Biden on this. Well, you hear, well, a lot of people don't watch these debates. Well, that's even worse.
Yeah.
Because they're going to see clips from this debate. They're going to see it on TikTok. They're going to see it on Twitter. And those clips are going to be Biden not finishing thoughts, Biden dozing off, the facial expressions from Joe Biden. That's going to be the focus of this whole thing.
Yes. And to just talk briefly about substance, yeah, Biden's substance was better than Trump. Trump is an endless barrage of things that are not true. Mm-hmm. It's just a constant yelling of insults, of things that are inaccurate. It's a tidal wave of bullshit. Mm-hmm. And because of the format of the debate, it wasn't really the job of the moderators to push back on that. It was Biden's job, and he couldn't, for the most part, he couldn't do it effectively. And he would speak and have good points. And I made this point yesterday and was quoted on it a few times. If you read a transcript of this debate, you'd look at it and think Biden won. Mm-hmm. If you watched it, you would be horrified. Mm-hmm.
And the vote for president is so different, I think, than most any other vote.
Yes.
I think you're voting for your mayor, you're voting for your governor. It's a little bit more, maybe, at least it was more policy oriented, more issue focused. President is such an emotional vote.
Yes.
And you've got to project that confidence in the public that I can do the job.
Yeah.
Joe Biden did not do that.
No.
To your point, Trump could say anything.
Yes.
Make up anything out there. He could say, I invented math.
Yes.
And we're not talking about that.
Right.
Because he said it clearly, he said it confidently, even though they're only 3-4 years apart. Biden seems so much older than Donald Trump on that stage.
Yes. And it's one thing to talk about Biden being old, which he is, and Trump is old too. Yeah. They're very close. The jarring thing for a lot of people watching Biden is it's not just that he's old. It's now people look at them and he reminds them of relatives who are suffering from dementia. It's hit that stage. I don't think that's an exaggeration. Yeah. It was really disheartening at times. And he can run on his record, and that's what we're hearing people say. Look at the record. He's had 3+ years of a solid record of getting things done, and all of that is great. But it does not fill one with confidence to see him in that setting at this stage.
Yeah, because campaigns should be about looking forward.
Yes.
You look at the past, look at the record to assure them moving forward. Look what I've done. I can continue to do this. When you have a debate like that, again, it raises lots of serious questions about that. But I do want to point out here, and we do have to spend some time on this. I mean, Biden definitely going into this, coming out of that debate, reinforced that negative narrative that he's not fit for the job. I think the same can be said, something similar about Trump, that he reinforced the narrative.
Yes.
That he has challenges when it comes to being truthful.
That would be the kindest phrasing possible there, but yes.
I mean, the breaking fact check machines again last night, making outlandish claims. And again, 3 times he was asked whether he'd accept the results of the election. And he didn't answer it.
No, he wouldn't answer it.
I mean, I believe it was the second time he was pressed on that. He accept the results on the election. I think he said, can we talk about Russia?
Yeah.
And again, Biden's performance was so bad, the media, us included, are spending more time talking about that than the other claims that Donald Trump made.
Yeah.
Defending J6 rioters, not agreeing, saying he's going to, accept the election results, even though he has produced zero evidence.
Yeah.
Zero evidence has been produced and backed up and verified that there has been widespread voter fraud or theft.
And didn't he at one point promise that in a week he's going to have a news conference unveiling all the incredible evidence?
I mean, it's to a point where that should be a joke. Even if you're a supporter of Donald Trump, you've got to be you've got to acknowledge that that's total bullshit.
Yes.
because it's not going to happen. Just like Infrastructure Week.
Infrastructure Week
fucking
never happened.
You know, it's just a thing he says.
Yes.
You know, I think, man, I think that not to be Pollyannish, but man, the American public was really losing out on this one.
Yes.
It was the election. This is the election the American public, I think, polling showed really didn't want.
No.
And here we are.
No. And as many times as I've heard that, Biden is the only person who could beat Trump, but maybe Trump's the only person that could beat Biden, any version of that, I think, what the hell does that even mean?
I know.
I don't understand that. And I don't know where the Democrats go from here. I don't know what do now.
It's a bunch of bad decisions moving forward.
Yes.
Does Biden stay in the race? The status quo it may or may not be the worst decision. That's on the table right now. Does he step down, release the delegates, and they go have a convention fight? Well, what happens if they snub Kamala Harris?
It would be a very difficult move.
First woman vice president, and the first black woman vice president.
Yes,
that creates problems for the Democratic nominee if you do that.
If you pass over Kamala for someone like a Gavin Newsom, whose name comes up all the time, you're going to have a very, very, very serious problem with, among other things, black women voters and probably black voters in general. And honestly, you should. That's not unfair. That would be a hell of a snub. You'd have to have Kamala Harris somehow convincing people she's okay with the move, something I'm not anticipating happening.
No. I don't know where you would move forward from that. I mean, I think she'd have to be the pick for the Democrats moving forward, unless you can get around for that. I mean, people. I've joked, I've seen on Twitter, it's like, well, maybe Michelle Obama. Like, that's not going to happen.
Yeah, I don't think she wants any part of that. And Kamala might be fine. I mean, she's a reasonable, qualified candidate. We also saw in the campaign, when she was running for president before she became the running mate, she didn't exactly light the world on fire.
No,
I'm not sure how that goes. But at this point, watching another debate, I think most Democrats would feel a hell of a lot better seeing Kamala Harris up there than Joe Biden up there.
Yeah, and the thought was going into the debate too that if it does go off the rails, that there's enough time to do something with ahead of that convention, and if that wasn't off the rails, I don't know what is.
Yeah. That I hope that was off the rails. I don't want to see off the rails if that wasn't off the rails. And it's funny. It seems like every 4 years you get a lot of political reporters who are bringing up the same. They get excited about maybe it's a brokered convention. Maybe this is the year that the president steps down, the vice president, and we always hear about all these things are going to happen, and they never, ever, ever happen.
Yeah, because they're dreaming about covering a brokered convention.
Yes. And they don't want to cover the dog and pony show.
Getting scoops from the formerly smoke-filled back rooms.
Yes.
Just
it's probably now like the lobby of a Starbucks.
Yeah. Or text messaging, a chat group on your phone. So
I'm always skeptical when I hear about what's going to happen to the convention. They could go this way, they could go that way, and they never do. This would seem like the one time where maybe it's time to consider taking some action.
Well, it doesn't seem like Biden's going that way. I mean, he was at an event today. I saw, a minute of it. And
Same here.
It seems like he was pretty bullish on moving forward.
He, his delivery appeared very forceful. I literally saw him on a satellite image while we were taping the TV show. He looked a hell of a lot better than he looked last night. I don't know how he sounded.
Great. I hope he did, but that wasn't the ball game, man.
No. No, we were not all watching his campaign appearance from North Carolina.
I feel like that's like the big home run hitter going for the golden sombrero. It's 4 strikeouts in a game, and then people question whether they still got it, and then they're like, "Come watch me at batting practice."
Yeah,
and he's just like crushing 500 footers.
Yeah,
great. It really didn't matter. I'm sure he looked more fit today in front of a friendly crowd. But man, that doesn't matter.
No.
What happened was the night before.
Yes.
Anything else you want to cover from this? Because I could talk about this all day.
I don't know. Any other aspect of the death of democracy that you, you want to look at? It's so easy to look at this and start going, God, am I overreacting?
No, I know.
And
I mean, look, broader picture, yeah, you just talk about like Biden had a bad, but really, voters had a bad night overall. I mean, you get you're forced to choose between. Guys who got into arguments last night about their fucking golf handicaps.
That was infuriating. It was infuriating. No one gives a shit. Shut up with that.
No, nobody gives a single shit
Yes.
about your handicap.
Yeah.
And whether or not, I'll play you, as Biden said, as long as you carry your bags. Oh, geez, come on.
Yeah.
Who cares?
Yeah.
Trump challenging Biden to take a cognitive test.
Yeah.
And then, Biden saying, "Oh, I'll challenge you to a driving competition."
Yeah. I don't know.
Like, what the hell are they talking about?
And on a side note, Trump's repeated boasting that he aced his cognitive test, I don't think is
that was administered by Ronnie Jackson. Anybody remember that great mind of medical science?
Like, I don't think that I aced the cognitive test is quite the boast. I aced the test to determine if I am lucid.
Yeah.
Good work, man.
They said it was the greatest test ever. It was the greatest performance on a cognitive test ever.
God.
Well,
I just sat there thinking, this is all humiliating. I can't believe we've reached this point. These are our two candidates.
Yeah.
Early on, they welcomed our international viewers, and I thought, no, you should be apologizing to our international viewers.
Yeah. Before we go, man, I spent a long week covering debates.
Yeah.
Not just the presidential debate.
Yeah.
There are a lot of very local debates, and I do think we need to hit on one before we get out of here. That was the Maricopa County Republican primary debate.
Yeah.
Involving Stephen Richer.
Yeah.
Who is running against Justin Heap, and I believe it's Don Hyatt.
Sounds right.
So it's a three-way primary in that race. People who listen to this podcast probably are very familiar with Mr. Richard's history with Donald Trump, with election deniers. Richard has stood up to Donald Trump. He has stood up to election deniers. He's paid a price personally and politically for that. People have gone to jail, to prison for threatening Mr. Richard. After the debate last week, he was asked if, who he was going to vote for in November, and he said just point blank, I'm going to vote for Joe Biden.
Right.
It seems to have done a lot of damage for his campaign, for his chances to seek another term, and it looks like he's not even going to get out. The incumbent's not even going to get out of the primary at this point. I thought it did some serious damage to him. I don't know why he said it, but then again, if you want to get a little bit cynical about it, it also seems like no good deed goes unpunished. Where we always want honesty from our politicians, and then once they're honest, they get hammered.
Yeah. I'm not going to chastise a guy for giving an honest answer to a question, and
No.
I can't imagine. And look, Stephen Richer is an absolute hardcore Republican. He is a dyed-in-the-wool Republican.
Yeah.
He is not a Democrat who is pretending to be Republican for a race.
Yeah. Go ask him about tax policy. Go ask him about regulation.
Yes.
He's an old school Republican.
He's an old school Republican, which means he's not a Trump guy.
Yeah, he's not MAGA though.
He's not MAGA, and if the followers of the presidential nominee had been sending me and my family death threats, I don't think I'd be voting for him either.
Well, that's the thing. Because Ted Cruz gets lampooned all the time for supporting Donald Trump. Because remember, Donald Trump said Ted Cruz's wife was ugly.
Yeah, his wife is ugly, and his dad killed Kennedy.
Jesus Christ!
And Ted will grovel with the best of them to get. to get
Like
Trump to pat him on the head.
Richard's not going to go that way.
No, he's not.
You know, and look, I don't know. I still don't know if it's the end of his candidacy, because you do have two candidates to the right of Stephen Richer.
Right.
They're both MAGA Trump supporters. Will they chop up that vote?
Yeah. And, how widespread is the reaction to his saying he would vote for Biden? Because it tended to be overshadowed by the Republican leader who said she would lynch him. That got a lot more publicity.
Sure did.
Yeah.
And she's paid a hefty political price for that, right? Oh wait, no, she's still in it. She's still in it. Yeah. She's still leading the delegation, the Republican delegation for next month's Republican convention in Milwaukee, and she's still the number 2 as far as this podcast and this tape, and as far as we know right now, she's still the number 2 in charge over at the Maricopa County Republican Party.
Yeah. I wouldn't anticipate that changing based on
No,
this.
and she sent us a statement actually that was not apologetic.
No,
at
it's
all.
not apologetic. Oh, it's a hilarious joke that I would lynch
Yeah,
him.
great. Yeah, love it. Yeah. Lynching jokes, always funny.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, she said it was a joke. Everybody knows I don't like Richard. Well, look, there are plenty of people I don't like either, but I don't call for them to be lynched.
Right.
You know, that's not only is that a bridge too far, that's many bridges too far. That's an interstate too far.
Yeah.
You know, like come on. But yeah, it hell of a news week, man.
It really was.
And we're only like scratching the surface. There were other things we can't even get into. One of the sheriff's candidates wants to bring back Tent City.
Yeah.
Not the tents per se, but more of a barrack situation.
Yes. And he told you on the show recently that the inmates love Tent City.
Yeah, he repeated that again during the debate. I just want to tell you, the inmates love Tent City. I cannot tell you how many emails I've gotten over the years from viewers, from readers,
want to share how much they enjoyed their time there.
Yeah.
It's got 5 stars on Yelp. Trustpilot, man. They love Tent City.
Every time I thought about Tent City, I always thought of that movie, the Blues Brothers movie, where there was a joke in there, and this is like the Cook County jail. It's got a wicked pepper steak. Like the people in Tent City would have killed for that pepper steak. Weren't they just served gruel like straight from like Oliver Twist?
Yes. Over the years, I shot a couple stories at Tent City.
Yeah,
they didn't seem to be enjoying it. I didn't sense the enthusiasm when I was there.
The last time I was there was on a July 4th thing where Joe was doing some dumb PR thing where he was making all the inmates wear American flags on their striped uniforms. They did not look like they were enjoying any of it.
No.
You know, and then they always say like, "Hey, sheriff," and like, "See, they love me." I'm like, "You're their overseer."
Yeah.
You're literally their warden.
Yeah.
What are they going to say? Hey, Joe, F off?
Yeah.
No.
No.
That's not going to happen, dude.
No.
I don't want to. Anyway, that happened this week as well. So it's been a hell of a week. Anything else you want to say? Anything else you want to share?
I think that's about it, man.
Yeah, man.
I'm looking forward to a vacation coming up. We got July 4th next week.
Woohoo.
Yeah.
America, man.
Yeah.
Happy birthday, man.
Happy birthday. Sorry.
Sorry.
Sorry we let it get to this. It's a grand old flag. Hate to sully it like we have in the last 24 hours. But
and what did you get America for its birthday? Well, I got a presidential candidate saying, quote, "I did not have sex with a porn star."
Yes. And the other one calling him an alley cat.
Happy birthday, America.
Happy birthday.
And with that, see you next week.
See you next week.
Thanks for listening. You can subscribe on YouTube, Spotify, Apple, the Google Store, or anywhere else you get your podcasts. See you next time.